This is Kathryn Getsky, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. We are here to share science, stories, and strategies for how to hope. I'm the Chief Hope Officer of the Shine Hope Company, and Shine is the mnemonic for how we teach hope. So when we talk about hope, we talk about how we use stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and eliminating challenges, which are our thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. Hope is a skill. You can measure hope, you can teach hope, and you can start practicing skills to activate higher hope in your life today. And on this Hope Matrix podcast, we aim to bring in guests, experts in science, people with stories, and those that have strategies for activating hope in your life. Well, hello, listeners. This is Kathryn Getsky, host of the Hope Matrix podcast. And it's super special for me today to have with us Jonathan Bogner, who has quite the story that I will have him share a bit. I met Jonathan back when I was working on my other company, the Mood Factory, and got an elevator pitch show and pitched my company there, and he was on the journey, and I've since transitioned to Hope, which we'll get a little bit into, but he is here today to share his own experience, a massive health challenge that he'll talk about, and his journey to healing. And I, have seen him for the first time in a very long time. And I must say, Jonathan, welcome. And you're actually looking pretty amazing for,
Well, thank you. Thank you. I feel amazing.
Yeah. Wow. It's incredible. So let's start first with the story. Why don't you share with us? Yeah.
Yeah, so we met and I looked at the dates, 2017 when I
Oh,
was
okay.
producing, I was producing Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch. And
Yeah.
you auditioned and I
Yeah.
got you on the show and you pitched to the judges and I liked you and I liked the person that recommended you. And unfortunately, I got all the mood stuff that you sent me, and you're doing, I thought you were on the border of breaking through.
Mm.
Um, when we met, I didn't broadcast it, but I had a 16 years ago, I had an incident, and the incident was I had two strokes, heart failure, and aphasia. So I was producing movies, sold my movie at Sundance, came back, and a crisis happened, and I really couldn't talk for a year. And I adjusted to the all the disabilities of being having a stroke. And I don't think I had a lot of disabilities. And clearly, when I met you, I had a defib in my heart, that would
Wow.
shock my heart, and no one knew about it. So I reinvented myself into a reality producer. We produced 12 reality shows, and then we kind of went on, and I got increasingly sicker, and ultimately was listed on the heart transplant list. And I about 18 months ago, my clock rang because I had a ticking time bomb in my chest, and that defib went off 8 times. The last time it went off, it was back to back shocks, and it was like touch and go if I was going to make it. And I was in the hospital for 30 days. And they offered me, well, they didn't offer, I got that, call. We've got a heart for you at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I realized, or they told me, the cardiologist, it's a woman's heart. And I thought, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. I was expecting a man's heart, but based on my size and all the details, meaning the blood, we were compatible with the blood, but I'm not a big guy, so and I got a woman's heart. It was I don't know if anyone has researched getting a heart transplant, but it's you know I, I don't know if I want to wish that on anyone, but it was a life altering moment. The buildup, getting the heart, and then recovering from the heart. And I actually trained to get the heart because I knew I was going to get a heart, and I wanted to be fit in order to get the heart, because when I get the heart, I was gonna, I dropped down to 100 pounds. So, I lost, 30% of my body weight. So moving on, I have recovered and I'm talking to you, and I want to kind of talk about, how I recovered and I developed my own philosophy about life. Because getting a woman's heart, people said, what is the big difference? Well, there's biological differences. A woman's heart is a little smaller. That's the downside, but the upside is they deal with pain, both physical pain and emotional pain, very differently than a man's heart. So, am I, do I feel more empathetic? I think I'm more empathetic going through this experience, and especially getting a woman's heart. Do I have memories of they always say that the heart remembers. There's muscular memory. I have not changed, what I eat, and I've not changed the things that I do regularly, but I think there are different changes that I've experienced getting the heart transplant. And so what I've done is kind of evolve to kind of having a philosophy, and the philosophy is it's called rigorous optimism, because you're not always optimistic. Sometimes it's hard, and you have to wake up. Every day is a different day. And it's almost like you don't know what life has in store for you. And most of the time it's the same day. It's kind of like, groundhogs, because we all have a routine. And I really value my routine, and I don't like to change my routine, even though, you have opportunities. Talking to you is an opportunity, so you change your routine. But I practice rigorous optimism, and then I want to be relentlessly alive, talking to you. By the way, you look beautiful. Nice to see you.
Oh, so
So
good to see
you
you.
look,
I'm looking across at you and you have a new heart,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That's amazing.
It is. It is. The scars that you have, both physical and emotional scars, you can see the physical scars, and I'm not taking my shirt off, but I'm saying you can see the physical scars, but
Yeah.
the challenging thing is, I remember when my doctor, my cardiologist, said to me, when I was like hooked up to 4 IVs. And then he said to me, well, we have to take you off the IVs in order to justify that you need the heart. I'm like, 4 IVs? I can't get out of bed. I can't even go to the chair. I couldn't even walk 5 feet. And it's like, are you kidding me? And he said, well, that's how we determined. He said, I'm going to make you sicker to make you better.
Mm.
And I think that's how America medical system operates. You have to be so sick to get an organ.
Mm.
And people who get organs, they're all lucky. They're
Yeah.
very lucky because there's any one day there's anywhere, from 100 150,000 people needing an organ, especially with a heart. They're only giving out, or they're the people who donate those hearts, there's only 3,500 hearts to go around, and let's just say there's 10,000 people waiting. I don't know what happens to the other
Mm.
7,000. Probably, maybe they die. I don't know. But
Mhm.
going back to, being relentlessly alive, you have to
Mhm.
focus on the moment. So, and people are always thinking about the past. What have I done wrong in my past that guides me to my present day predicament? Okay, thinking about the past does not help, because the past is the past,
Mm.
and thinking about the future, you don't know, because life can change in one instant. You walk about your house, you go out on the street, and you can just get run over. You you can get so many things that could go wrong. Just
Mhm.
focus on the moment. So I try to focus on being relentlessly alive. And then you have to have this resilience. You have to be resilient in the sense that, good things, bad things, you just want, it's like, I mean, if no, I'm using a golf analogy, but I don't play golf. So it's like, you want to be par for the course.
Mm.
Sometimes you'll be over, sometimes you'll be under, but you really kind of want in the middle. So, you have to be resilient, because life throws you all different types of situations. So whether you're in the Midwest, whether you're in California, whether in the East Coast, I mean, everyone knows that life, you have to be resilient and get through it, because tomorrow will be another day. And if you
Mm.
get through things, then you have to be resilient in your life. So that's kind of like, my philosophy, and it really parallels what, your philosophy with hope is very similar.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something you have to practice and be intentional about, learn the skills around. We're not taught how to hope. And so, and absolutely the thinking of the past and the future, we talk about that as eliminating challenges, or E in Shine Hope.
Mhm.
Rumination is when you go over and over and over something in the past that's negative, and worrying is worrying about the future. And that's a challenge to hope. It's hard to stay hopeful when you're constantly in that state. And so it's funny, because the Mood Factory was about sensory engagement and learning how to get into the present moment and enjoy the present moment. So
Right.
that's, what you're talking about. We were talking a little earlier about how I got veered off the Mood Factory. I was pitching retailers on the scent line, had put the light bulbs to the side for various reasons, one of them being research around colored lighting. And I wanted evidence-based products for getting engaged in the present moment. And meanwhile, I had the nonprofit and was doing work around schools and teaching hope as a skill, and hopelessness being the single consistent predictor of suicide. We were
Mhm.
able to publish research that you could actually teach hope. And hopelessness isn't only the single consistent predictor of suicide, it's also the single predictor of violence.
Mhm.
And, we do so much in violence prevention and suicide prevention at time of crisis and, after the fact. And like you say about people getting sicker, I mean, just really waiting way too late. And if hopelessness is the single consistent predictor, why aren't we teaching people what is hopelessness and how do you get to hope? And so I put the Mood Factory to the side, and I
Mhm.
ended up creating another company called the Shine Hope Company, because I believe it's so critical to teach these skills, and especially with what we're seeing right now around violence and around mental health of youth and anxiety and depression, hopelessness being the primary symptom. And so created that shine hope framework and believe, as you alluded to, that when we deal with challenges in life, I call it cultivating hopeful mindsets. We have to have a hopeful mindset around it, and we have to be proactive about the skills and the things we're doing and practicing to get us back to hope so that we don't fall into clinical anxiety and depression. And so to me, that's what's so incredible about what you've been through and how well you are right
Yeah.
now. I mean,
Well,
it's extraordinary, really.
well, I mean, hope has been a big part of my life, and I didn't realize that your your mission is hope, because hope is one of those amorphous things. It's like, do I am I reading a book that Freud, it's, the research tells me to be hopeful. Hopeful is almost like a something that people don't realize that they're born with. And you're born with it because the the you life generates hope in a weird way. So everyone knows about being hopeful, just the same way that we're all born with rhythm. And because
Are we? Are we all born with rhythm?
we are, because the mother's heartbeat
Oh, right.
transfers into the womb, because I did a
Mm.
whole series of videos in the old days, called "Kids Make Music," and so "Kids Make Music" was premised on the fact that we're born musically inclined,
Mm.
right? You can
Mm.
bang a drum. So because that's the heartbeat. So hope should be also taught. And I think it's you're doing, it's a big mountain to climb, and you're starting, because I think the world needs hope, and it should be taught as a almost like a core curriculum.
Yes, math,
So
hope.
it's like you have to have a class in hope, and it's like, well, that's not math. Okay, well, it's not English. No, it's not math. Is it humanities? Yeah, yeah. It's being human. It's being human. And so you have to have hope that you're going to have a better life, or you're going to change your life in any way possible. So I think what you're trying to do is admirable, and I'd love to be part of it. And I think what I know to be true is I have changed my life, because if you can change your mind, you can change your life.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I changed my life because I was looking, doing podcasts with you or other people, and I'm just I feel like I'm a professional guest. I don't want to take the burden that you have taken on of finding and cultivating and curating all these people, and hope you're going to get someone that is really, good or exciting. I want to be a guest, but at the same time, what I've learned is I was looking to have a platform in order to speak, write, and you do everything. You write, you speak, you're a lecturer, based on my, my, I would say my health. I'm much more circumspect about traveling and speaking, but podcasts are great, and talking to you is great. So I can control those elements. But what I'm going to say was that, um, when you have hope, the world looks better.
Mhm.
And when you have feelings of you have no hope. And I was working with the police department, and you look at these jails, and you look at these
Mm,
people who are homeless, and you look at these people who have no money, and what separates them from this downward spiral. And I
mm,
think it's convincing them that there is hope, because I had suicidal thoughts, I had depression, and you have to fight those demons
mhm.
deep within yourself in order
Yeah.
to come out the other side. And so it's a constant. That's why I said it's rigorous
Mhm.
optimism. You have to constantly fight those negative thoughts. You have to constantly try to make that, you know, you you have to get some skills in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all about skills. I mean, hope is all about learning and practicing and cultivating these skills. And I love what you said about you're born with hope, because there's, debate around that. And I think you're right. I think hope is sucked out of us. You know, life can suck it out of us, and we can learn how to be hopeless. And we need and must be taught how to hope, because it impacts everything. I mean, the science of hope is compelling. So I don't know if you know that you can measure hope. So there's hope scales,
Mhm,
and these are validated scales they've looked at in science, and it predicts how long you live, how quickly you recover from diseases,
mhm,
heart, aka heart transplants. I mean,
mhm,
so you must be pretty high in hope. How well you do in school, your sports, your sports performance more so than your abilities. Your hope score is going to predict this.
mhm.
If you graduate college, if you stay in college, all of these things. And it's a protective factor for anxiety and depression. So the higher we can get you on your hope score, the better all of these things are going to turn out, and come out for you. And so to me, it's so important to teach these skills. And I look at places like jails or the homeless or inner city youth, and this is why I do that podcast, because I've talked to addicts that were homeless, that got themselves out of it into a life that they love. And it's always around using the hope skills. I mean, it comes down to how they've applied these skills to their life to step by step kind of get out of it. And so I believe anyone in any circumstance can move forward, but not unless we teach them these skills, and so.
Yeah, I want to kind of echo what you're saying. When you said when you're born with hope, and I think by 10 years old that your situation, your environment, you know, have sucked out all the imagination you
Mm,
have, because you when you're born in the first couple years, your imagination takes you to places that you would never dream possible. So your imagination, and then you're hoping that life will will work for you,
mhm,
and so you're inundated with people who have no hope,
mhm. Yeah.
because you're surrounded with people who have no hope, and you have to kind of educate yourself to be hopeful, even though the people around you have no hope. And,
Mhm,
and I think it's endemic that we have to kind of relearn the skills that we're all born with. And hope, imagination, again, I would say they get sucked out based on your environment. And how do we change hope? And it's it's a skill. It's a skill that you have to learn as a child, right?
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't know if we can help, we can always try to help people who have no hope. And but it's hard. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It's like you have no hope, and there's people who are homeless because they want to be homeless. They're
Well,
wandering.
I mean, probably a small,
But
small percentage of, I mean, I think it goes way deeper than that. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I believe you can teach hope at any age. I think it's a lot. Well, we know that you can. We just
Mhm.
published research on a college course we have, and it's a lot easier to teach it when they're young because they
Yeah.
kind of take
Yeah.
it in. They're like, "Oh, that makes sense."
Right.
There's an interesting study with young kids, like I think 5-year-olds or something, and they're watching their caregivers play a game, and half the caregivers give up early on the game. And those kids learn, the kids that see the giving up, that they give up. They give up earlier because they witness that. And so, and that's just a small way of how we learn hopelessness. But
Right.
it's that, despair and angry or frustrated or sad or whatever, and then helpless to do anything about it. And it can be, as simple as a game that and then we start practicing that. We give up early, we don't do the things and
Mhm.
it becomes a pattern, and that's how we live. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm now on a pretty, I want everyone, everywhere in the world to be taught how to hope,
Right.
you know,
And you're doing it one step at a time.
that's
You know,
right.
it's a building block.
It
And
is.
again, I want to be part of it, but
You are a part of
I
it.
I feel
Yeah.
hope and what I have gone through, because who would want, you know, if you look at my health history,
Yeah.
who would want what I have, right?
Yeah.
And you said like, man, it couldn't be any worse. I mean, 2 strokes, heart failure, aphasia, um, my pulmonary edema, you know, the heart mechanism was at 12%. When I got the heart, it was 9%. The pumping of the heart, you're technically dead, right?
Yeah.
I had a defib that shocked me back to life, so it's like there's no oxygen to the brain. That's a definition of death 8 times. And by the way, um, Salman Rushdie said, and I totally agree with him. When you die, there is no like pearly gates and there's singing choirs to usher you in. You're dead, you're dead. And
Mm.
so don't want to cast a
Mm.
negative vibe, but you should live for the moment. So
Yeah.
the alternate version is, if you live life, and I have to live life because I have, again, got a new heart, doesn't mean I'm going to have a natural life. So every day is a gift. And so there I will experience other, difficulties with getting the heart. It's an organ that you were not born with, right? Think about it. Okay. So it's a transplanted organ. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And I have to conduct my life that, this is the moment that I want to experience. That's why I'm doing personal stories, and I want to interview people, who have these, you know, amazing stories that they have survived from. And
Mm.
you can't survive if you don't have hope.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah.
so hope runs through everything. And it's, for me, I think it's almost like a will to survive.
Hmm.
A will to survive equals hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're not hopeful, you give up, just like
Yeah.
the kids in the game.
Absolutely.
If you give up there's an old saying, if you want to be successful in the entertainment business, and you're an actor or an actress, and there's an agent, in order to get through that door, you have to get a part. So you're waiting in a waiting room And there's 20 people in that waiting room, and most of them, like 80%, they have been told, oh, well, it's going to be an hour, it's going to be 5 hours, it's going to be a day. At the end of the journey, there's two people in the waiting room saying, like, hey, I've been here 24 hours. When is that door going to open? So another week goes by. There's only one person in that room, and that door opens. Next up for success, next up. So it's
Mm,
almost like you have to practice being hopeful in order to stay in the room, and you just can't give up. And I
mm,
think today's kids, because that's what you want to focus on, even though you said to me that you can teach hope at any age.
mm,
You know, it's if you teach kids early enough
yeah.
and they develop those skills to be
Mm,
hopeful. And not everyone is going to be the best quarterback. Not everyone is going to be the best tennis player, basketball player, because to be a basketball player, it requires that you have to be over 6'2", 6'5", being basketball player, but you can play basketball throughout your high school, possibly college, but whether you're going to make it to the pros or not. Same thing, there is a natural selection based on physical ability, but you have gone through your journey, your life, and then you have been hopeful. And you know what? Hope, you will have other opportunities to make different decisions if playing football is not for you.
yeah. And your ability to pivot in that and to re-goal and to hope for something else. I mean, we teach not to get attached to outcomes and hope. And that's an important part of it, because when we become attached to outcomes and we want to be that basketball player, and then if we can't be that basketball player, but we're attached to that, of course you're going to be hopeless. You're going to feel despair and you're going to feel helpless.
But if you want to be that, let's just play this step.
Yeah,
Let's play this.
let's do it.
Let's do it. So if you're a basketball player and you're not tall enough to be a a professional basketball player, there's so many jobs in basketball that you
Good.
say, hey, you know what? I know how to play basketball. I was only 5'6", probably not going to make it. But you know what? I could be a coach. I could be a trainer. So there's so many ancillary things that you could do if you
Mm-hmm.
really love that sport.
Yep.
Same thing with life. You can, as you said, pivot, and you don't have to know exactly what you're going to do. You were
Mm-hmm.
not born, and you had a job lined up because your father and your grandfather started a company and that you just segued into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people it works because they like what their parents or grandfather created. They love it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't, because
Yep.
freedom of choice. Hey, I'm an individual. I have a choice. I want to take my own way to be successful. And success is also a misnomer. You can be successful in your personal life. You can be successful based on your friends. You can be successful in business. So I think we gauge success about money.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, for
and
sure.
so if you're successful, you have a lot of money. Guaranteed, they don't worry about money if you're a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed. But they have all the other issues. They have health issues. They've got, family issues. So there's so many other things. Yeah, they're richer than you. They're a
Yeah.
billionaire. So let's
There's,
assume you're not a billionaire. So
yeah.
how can you be successful? You can be successful in a lot of other ways.
Yeah. Like living in the present moment.
Living in the
You
present
know,
moment. Yeah.
that is a major win. Like if you can learn to live in the present moment, just to be here and enjoying the moment for what it is, I think that is we teach kids about that. It's enjoying the journey. The
I,
success is about in learning how to enjoy the journey to wherever we're going, and knowing it's going to change. And there's plenty of research around, we need a certain amount of money to live and to be happy. And then above
I,
that threshold, it's, you know,
but
it
I think
doesn't.
going back to, living in the moment and being successful, you can be successful based on other non-monetary things, right?
Hmm.
But in order to live in the moment, you will see the future because you can't just like give up. You can't give up on hope. You need to live in order to see the future.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do you live in the moment in order to see the future? So we don't know because life is a journey and everyone knows it's a journey and everyone in the whole planet was like trillions has a personal story. And whether it's and it's important to you, it's important to your parents and your siblings. Whether it's important to everyone else, I don't know.
Well, here's where I think it is important. So, and this is why I want to get back into your story and the skills you use to navigate your way through it,
Mhm.
because I'm sure it wasn't all easy,
Yeah.
I know that it wasn't, but I mean, our stories are important if we use it to teach other people and make the path easier for them, I think. And that's my big goal is to share specific strategies around stories that so people can spend less time in the muck making the bad choices and decisions and more learning from people that have gone through it successfully, which is, why to me it's so important that you're sharing your story. But then also the strategies. So I start with stress skills just because, that's when we look at hopelessness and persistent hopelessness is the problem when it becomes a challenge because we all experience moments of hopelessness all the time, really. It's pretty normal. And so but you look at the emotional despair we feel. So you feel sad or angry or afraid. So I'm sure you felt those some all the time. Like, what was that like for you going through I guess the diagnosis and then waiting for a heart transplant and then recovering? How did you manage the stress of that?
Sometimes you don't think. I have to go back in time to think through questions in this that there are of and I had plenty of these moments of depression. And I would say, why me? Because you have all that, especially with health issues, you think about why me? And then I concluded it's random. So if you believe, which I do, in the randomness, there is, there was no preordained that I would have, I was going to get a new heart, right? It's not written, there's no rules of engagement. I believe that it's the randomness. So why me? Yeah, I went through those issues. Why me? But I just came out like that's that now defines me. So
Hmm.
if you look at my story is in the beginning, I wanted to be in the entertainment business. In the beginning, I did anything possible to further my career. And then I was going on a path and from movies to reality to documentaries. So I was going on this path and then boom, life got in the way or my health got in the way. And so I always put it into like, not why me? This happened to me. Just, move on with it. And that's a big challenge to to comprehend, like, because most people like, why me? Why did this happen to me? And they just go down into that rabbit hole and feel sorry for themselves, and they just can't get out of it, and some people, choose drugs, some people do whatever their way
Violence. Yeah.
of
Right.
medicating, you
Yeah.
know. So why me? So I was always physically active, meaning I got my endorphins, so working out and health was a way out for me when I was working out. And I'm not like a huge person, but I love working out, and that kind of got me out of that funk where it's like, why me? So you get out that why me. You get out of those suicidal thoughts. Why should I live? Why should I? Why don't I kill myself? Well, I mean, anyone can kill themselves. Anyone, and I was, you can see all the time people who want to kill themselves, and they force police to shoot them, or
Mm.
or they force with the drugs that they're on, or there's lots of ways that you can initiate killing yourself, or you can do it yourself. So I
Yeah.
think that's sad.
Okay,
And
I just want to interject then. If you're having any kind of suicidal thoughts, there's a 988 crisis hotline that's super important to be aware of and to know to call, and also a crisis text line that you can text. So, I mean, suicidal thoughts are normal. What
right,
we know about it, though, people don't want to die.
right,
What they want is their pain to end.
right.
And so that's around, I mean, and that's why it's important when you look at hopelessness, emotional despair, and a sense of helplessness to do anything about it, you can go down those rabbit holes. But we know, I mean, there is there's some work around the Golden Gate Bridge. The first thing people think when they jump off, they've talked to suicide survivors. I
Mhm,
wish I didn't do that.
mhm.
Like, fundamentally, we don't want to die.
Right,
And we want our pain, we want our despair to end, and we want to feel like we have power around it. And that's what hopelessness is, despair and helplessness that we can't do anything about it. So, what I'm trying to dig into is your emotional to see your sadness. How did you manage your sadness? Like, did you
yeah,
cry? Like,
yeah.
mourn? I mean,
So all the things you said. Do I cry? I used to cry at a drop of a hat, which just sounds so cliche. I cried a lot when I got the heart, because for
wow.
me, getting the heart was such like a relief,
Hmm.
because one, you get more oxygen to your brain, and I was
Hmm.
much more alive than I was when I had my failing heart, because the heart is pumping throughout
Hmm.
your body, and the brain is not getting enough oxygen, right? And so you get these suicidal thoughts. You get, thoughts of despair. So when I got the heart, I was so relieved, and I cried a lot. 18 months later, I probably cry uh, occasionally, occasionally. And that's not to say I don't have regrets, and that's not to say I don't have grief, but I manage those emotions, and I don't cry nearly as much. Um, I know I'm much more compassionate today than I was before, and so 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 the your questions were, how do I manage those Um,
The despair. I mean,
thoughts,
my
despair.
argument for hopelessness is you can always manage your emotional despair. You always can. So we don't want to die. Suicidal ideations aren't about wanting to die. They're
Yeah.
about we're experiencing hopelessness. So we have
Mhm.
this emotional despair and we have a sense of helplessness to do anything about it. You can always manage your emotional despair and you can always get from helplessness to some kind of action. It may not be I mean, I wanted my dad back. I couldn't bring my dad back. So I
Mhm.
had to move from helplessness to, I had to learn how to hope for different things other than having my dad here. But it's being taught these skills, right? And so I mean, the question is around, your sadness, your anger, your fear, that's what emotional despair
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
And it's,
I was very, very angry.
yeah,
And I just, you know, I have not, I don't use drugs, so I don't really drink. I love a cocktail, but I'm not an active drinker. I'm not an active drug user. I never got on pain meds that I needed, like, oxy, so I was very fortunate. But if you get on that downward spiral, and and you have to relearn to be hopeful, um,
right.
that is not my journey.
Right,
My
but yeah, so what did you do? How
Yeah,
did
so,
you manage your anger? Got to the gym, so you were able to exercise.
well, I would say back to the gym, and I walk.
You
I
what?
feel, I mean, I walk an hour a day. And I have a dog, and so, that keeps me walking an hour a day. I exercise an hour a day. And I love an Apple Watch because, you can, one, look at your kind of your heartbeat, your EKG, and it gives you rewards. It doesn't give you a gift certificate to Amazon that, okay, you get a $5 gift, but
Right.
it gives you, it shows up, good job, and it's psychic rewards. I love those kind of
Mm.
psychic rewards.
Mm.
Just going back to, you know, a will to live. If you look at it, we are all aging fast. The average age in 2030, which is only 6 years away, we're going to have 25% of Americans over 65. So we're aging and we don't want to die. So there's a lot of 80-year-olds, 90-year-olds, running around, not literally running around, but so we don't want to die because there's a finality when you die. You don't wake up in the morning, you die.
Well, I
So,
mean, it depends on your beliefs around death.
right, okay,
So,
yes,
yeah,
they're right, but I'm saying when
yeah,
I can only talk about my experience.
yeah, got
So
it.
my experience, when you die, but people want to prolong it. So what I'm saying is, my mother's 90 years old. Her quality of life is not good, and
Mm.
and she doesn't want to die. So
Hmm.
it's very interesting, and I deviate on that point because going back to being hopeless, or going back to, when you said about jumping off the Golden
Mm.
Gate Bridge, there is some poetic feeling like you jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and I don't know what that means, but going back to hopelessness, you have to learn it early. When you don't learn it early and you have all these issues, that's why they need you to spread the word. And going back to anger, yes, going back to my anger, I think I get angrier more than I used to before the heart, and I get angry and I'm blaming the meds I'm on. I'm taking 30 pills a day to
No,
maintain,
manage.
you
Yeah.
know, but I used to take 40. So it didn't go up. It
Yeah.
so
Progress. That's
yeah,
hopeful. Yeah.
yeah, I looked at it as a win, but
Yeah.
I blame the drugs I'm on. And then if I really think through it, am I angrier? Um, I lose patience, and
Yeah.
maybe, and I don't know if that's a cause of the drugs I'm on. My, I'm getting older. Am I more impatient? I get more impatient and angrier when I can't articulate what I want to do.
Mm.
Because when you have aphasia, you can't express because the synapses in the brain are making I would say, the long way around to get the words out.
Hmm.
Clearly, it doesn't appear I have any issues, but there is a deficit that I know. When I get the words confused or I can't express myself and I get angrier, I get angry at the people that I love, you
So
know?
I want to know how you manage the anger though. Like I want to know so how do you proactively manage the anger so you're not punching someone in the face or, yelling at everyone around you? Or what do you do in the moment when you're angry? Like how do you manage through that?
Okay. I don't have anger management issues.
Hmm.
So I want to clear that up. So it's not like I
Well, I
get
think
into
we all do. I mean, we all have to learn how to manage our anger.
right, right.
So,
And I get angry and then with myself or situations, right? So just dealing with myself, I feel I know internally when I'm getting angrier, right?
yeah.
So I've got a mechanism in my brain that says, okay, you're now going to cross over where you're
Yes.
uncontrollable anger.
Yes. Yes,
So how,
yeah.
how do I control
Work. Yeah.
anger? Okay. And
Yeah.
so there are occasions where, people do things um, that you just, it's a switch, right?
I know. Got to
I
get in before the switch.
Right.
Oh,
I practice getting in before the switch.
yes. And we got
And,
to teach all the jails that too. All the
right,
inmate, all of, yes. So how
right.
do you,
I
uh,
walk away.
yeah.
I don't engage.
Yeah.
I go quiet.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's interesting when you don't speak, either people think you're really smart or you're a total idiot. So or most of the time they think, well, for me, they think, oh, he's kind of smart. Why is he not talking? I'm angry and I want to control what I'm going to say to you. Uh,
Yes.
and
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 we
I
must.
noticed, I notice a lot of people, my friends, have anger issues, and I think it's just being able to. This is almost therapy for you and me, right?
Right.
That's a way to express myself and deal with those anger issues. So
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about anger. It's totally normal. And then we have all of these feelings around anger. It's how we express it that becomes a problem.
mhm,
And we have a physiological response when we're triggered. And when that happens, norepinephrine, adrenaline, they're flooding through our bodies. It's like that switch you talk about,
yeah,
right? And we teach our kids, you go into your downstairs brain, you can't think, you can't you make really horrible decisions. You
right,
say horrible things, you do horrible things. So like getting in before that switch when you can feel that switch, and then also noticing with other people when they're getting to their switch. But I mean, if we can come up with a strategy, I think in society to teach how do we get in before the switch and how do we make it cooler to manage that switch, cooler to be able to do that than it is to react in a, explosive way. And when you look, I just watched the jail. Did you see that jail documentary? Unlocked.
I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
it's an 8. But it's just so clear to me in the prison systems that, they're not taught the skills. They don't know the biological mechanisms of what's even happening. So there's all this blame, there's all this shame. Instead of just normalizing the conversation around anger, sadness, fear, and figuring out how do we strategize together in
Mhm.
society to like manage that switch
Well, do
so
you
that,
think it's the DNA that we have inherited when we were Neanderthals? It's like the fight, flight,
yeah, for sure it is.
freeze,
Yes. And
on, and
yes.
flop. Those are the,
Flop you.
although there's five,
There's 5 now. There was
right,
Fawn was a new one. Now we're Fly. Yeah.
right. So it's fight.
It is.
So
Yes.
everyone wants to fight, and then everyone, I chose the way to deal with it is you're angry. I can't get into your emotional, which you actually trigger them emotional. I would say, you're angry. I'm going to walk away.
Yeah.
We're going to revisit this another time.
Yeah.
And that, I mean,
It's it's the more
I
evolved brain. You're smarter. It's more evolved to do that than it is to be reactionary. And so it's
right,
how do we make it cool within all populations to be able to do that? I mean, so many people get ridiculed for walking away, the name calling, all of that. But that's really the evolved way to handle conflict. If you notice your biological mechanism is going out of control, because of that adrenaline and cortisol and norepinephrine, we can't problem solve. We're not going to have a constructive conversation.
it was I was doing this class, and the it ended last night, and it was a scenarios where you had to deal with a person, who potentially would kill you or kill themselves. Most of the time they were going to kill themselves, and there's
What
17.
kind of what kind of class was that, Jonathan?
Yeah,
What kind of classes are you taking?
it's a class. It's
Survivor?
it's not a survivor class. It was dealing with the police. So how do you
Oh,
manage these types of issues? And 16 people, would go into and confront that individual, right?
mm,
And possibly end up shooting that individual, right?
mm-hmm.
One person in this class said there's no way out for this person, right? He's contained. I'm not going to engage, and I'm going to stay out of his way until medical assistance or people who are trained to deal with that level of anger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, meaning most people will engage. You have to stop yourself from
Uh,
engaging. And
yeah.
I think that's a really good lesson, because naturally, one, we want to give help,
Yep.
or we engage, and it's when you argue with people,
Mm-hmm.
there are higher level arguments about the issue. And then there are issues where name calling.
Yep.
So, how do you distinguish saying, I don't like blonde haired women? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we know you're blonde. I don't know how you deal with that because I'm now challenging you, not
Mm-hmm.
on a level of our discussion, because I'm throwing out things that you can't, that's who you are.
Right.
So I think the way to de-escalate
Mm-hmm.
is to embrace, to say, oh yeah, I'm blonde, but I could change my hair color. If that's the issue, I'm happy with it. How can I de-escalate your anger to me? So,
Or I don't really care about what you think
right, but
about my blonde hair.
the
I
thing
mean,
is,
yeah,
the thing is, it takes time.
yeah,
It takes emotional brain power to
practice.
de-escalate and talk to the person. And most of us have a very short attention span. Hence the success of TikTok. Hence the success of Instagram. We have nanoseconds.
Mm.
We get bored within 30 seconds.
Mm.
I don't.
No, 8 seconds,
Yeah.
Jonathan. Oh,
Okay.
we're less than a goldfish now.
I don't know how
Mm.
to overcome that, because you and I are of a certain age that I'm speaking for myself, I
20,
was not
22.
born with uh, a computer. I was not born in the time of AI. I was born in the time of talking it out, not texting. You could talk to people because
Mm.
that, you know, but that engages you versus a text. So,
Yeah.
we were born
I,
at different times. So I don't know how you deal with people who are hopeless
well,
in, you know,
I mean, you learn the skills. And
yeah.
I don't deal with people I mean, I teach the skills around hope. I can't make someone hopeful. I
Mhm.
can't tell them to do the skills. I can't, people have to want to work for their hope. And you've got to
Mhm.
work for your hope. I mean, hope
Mhm.
is not, it's a simple construct, how we teach how to shine hope. So we teach stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, how to cultivate nourishing networks, and how to eliminate challenges, which are thinking patterns that get in the way of hope. We teach the skills, but I can't make you hopeful, and I can't make you practice the skills. I can't make you exercise. I can't make you learn deep breathing, the 90-second pause, all of these things. I mean, it takes intentional practice and work,
Yeah.
but if you look, and we have our teens, we have a teen program that it's a peer-to-peer program. They teach it, they work with each other on hope and teach each other how to integrate these skills into their lives. I mean, and part of that is we have them look for a hope hero. So any challenge you've been through in life, you look at who has successfully overcome that and you practice what they did, what stress skills they used, what happiness habits they cultivated, how they took inspired actions, how they created strong networks, nourishing networks, and how they eliminated those thinking patterns to hope, which, if someone has to go into a heart transplant or any kind of medical, now they're learning from you and they're learning specifically what you did. I think the one thing we just haven't covered is the nourishing network part of it. How was networks important in your recovery?
Critical. I think a network, and I define a network. I don't know what your definition is, I mean, I've read your, having, I don't know what the 5-to-1 rule is.
Yeah.
Explain.
5 positives to every negative every criticism, or you've got to say 5 positive things to a person,
And then
positive
criticize
interactions.
the one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, that's good. I think yeah, but most people don't do that. They
I
go
know.
one-on-one. So
Yeah.
I define my network as my support system, and my support system was my wife. Certain members of my family were disappointing, and I had to deal with that. But my wife came through. One of my sons really came through. Um, I have issues with my other son. He never came through for me, but he has his own issues with me. Um, and I don't know what they are personally, but he has issues. And I think friendships. I didn't have a community that I went to, dance classes or a support group. But my community, it was really friendships that I leaned on, and they visited me, and just telling my story got other people who have reached out to me. So I feel close family bonds and close friendships
Mm.
were really important to me, and they still are.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, there's so are the people we surround ourselves with. And I was just in a conversation earlier. If we don't have strong networks, there are a way to cultivate networks. There's always a way to find support groups, online groups.
Mhm.
We're talking about apps to create friends. I mean, so, if you feel you don't have a network, that's a goal. That's something you can hope for, and you can set goals to how to kind of cultivate those strong networks, because it takes work, having good relationships takes work, and
You know what? I remember saying, and I feel it's like rigorous. You have to work to get friends. So and you don't want to be catfish. So, I
which I have been just for
yeah.
the fact.
Uh, but I feel like we're talking about, friendships, and um, cultivating those it all is your ability to tell people what you think. And sometimes your thoughts are traumatic.
Mm.
Sometimes your thoughts are destructive, but you
Mm.
have to get those emotions, whether it's one of those AA, whether it's, they have all these
Therapist is good. Yeah.
therapy is great.
Mm.
Everything takes a person to want to make a difference.
Yeah.
Everything, it starts with the individual to say, do I want to spend my life in despair, or do I want to take small, positive steps
Mm.
to improve my life?
Yeah.
I can't account for that, but we can just give them the tools,
Yeah,
which you're
for
doing,
sure.
and the tools are being hopeful, and
Mm.
being again, optimism is a word that everyone kind of knows,
Hmm.
but you have to practice optimism. It's not
Yeah.
God given. I'm
Yeah.
waking up and I'm optimistic. No,
Hmm.
it's rigorous.
Yeah, absolutely. It sure is.
And then you have to practice being resilient, because life is not an up, it's almost like a bell-shaped curve.
Yeah.
And understanding the food you put into your body,
Yeah.
really, you have to have good food, and
Happiness habit. Yeah.
you have, you have
Nutrition. Key.
good exercise, and you have
Hmm.
good sleep. But putting the food into your body is
Hmm.
everything turns into glucose.
Hmm.
Metabolically, it just turns into what the body needs. And so you have spikes when you eat food. So you have to also understand there is a relationship with what you eat and how you feel.
Yeah. And how you feel impacts how you treat other people and yourself. So you
Yeah,
are a walking miracle, Jonathan.
thank you.
I am amazed. My advisor is Dr. Myron Belfer. I'll just kind of end with and he worked with Joseph E. Murray. And I don't know, Joseph E. Murray did the first human transplant.
Oh,
So
oh.
really amazing. Won a Nobel Prize for it. So, and Dr. Belfer is pretty amazing and hope. So I'm really grateful for he's at Harvard. He's a Harvard Catalyst. So
Mhm.
I'll report back to Dr. Belfer that
Yeah.
I met another transplant. Yeah, thriver. I will say.
Yeah.
Is there any final thoughts or words you want to say before we sign
Well,
off?
one thought is I want to introduce you a person who's dealing with women in New York in prison and how they find a way out. And I want to connect you with her.
Awesome.
My final thoughts are the same thoughts I had at the beginning of our discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I lost you. Is being optimistic, practicing optimism is rigorous, and
Mm,
maintaining rigor in your life. It's not, you don't wake up optimistic, you have to work at it. And just focusing on you and me in the now, you have to be relentlessly alive. Look at the things that we have in front of us, you know, and listen, it's better to be in America than in, you know, what's happening in Ukraine or what's happening in the rest of the world.
yeah.
Yes, those people have found moments of joy, but we're talking people right now in the U.S. It's better to be here, and then
Yeah.
you have to be resilient in your life.
Mm,
But you've got the ups and downs, and you know, talking to me, it's all about being resilient. With my health crisis, and I've gone
mm,
through 20 major issues with my health, and I
yeah.
continue to thrive and
Mm,
continue to make adjustments in my life. And right now I know I've got some issues. The heart had an issue, and it had a virus. I inherited that virus. Right now I'm just dealing with that virus. I have issues where my heart has irregular heartbeats, so I'm just dealing with that. So everyone deals with these things, but they
yeah.
have to manage the anger, and they have to manage, not all why me,
Yeah.
just move on. Yeah, it
Yeah.
happened to
Mm,
you, just move on. So
yeah. And where's your power of control? Where's the locus of control there? How can
yeah,
you?
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
love it.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much for this conversation,
yeah.
Jonathan, and thank you to all the listeners for listening in. The goal is to provide you some insights, some strategies that you can use in your life or potentially share with other people. We learn from other people that have gone through challenges that are successfully navigating them. They're not easy. It's not an easy path, but it's you know taking those moments of hopelessness and finding our way to hope, and hope is a constant practice and journey. So really appreciate you all listening in. Please feel free to share this with others as well. And Jonathan, again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you,
Yeah.
Kathryn. It's been a pleasure and a joy just having just a one-on-one with you. has
Yeah.
has been very made my day.
Mine too. You're awesome.
So
Awesome.
thank
All
you
right.
so
Thanks.
much.
Yeah. Thanks for listening into the Hope Matrix podcast. Have an amazing day, and don't forget to keep shining. So, thank you all for listening in to the Hope Matrix podcast. We want to shine a light that hope is teachable, hope is measurable and teachable, and provide you with actionable insights for how you can start activating hope in your life today, and provide a framework so you can start talking about hope with other people and practice these skills together, because we are better with hope. Please feel free to check out theshinehopecompany.com, where we list all of our resources around how to hope. We have a lot of free programs for how to hope, including the 5-day challenge, our hope infographic with a lot of skills that showcase how to hope, and articles of how to incorporate hope into your life. We have the Hope Beat Weekly, which is a weekly newsletter that shares strategies for hope. We have a My Hope Story template, so you can write your own hope story today. Also, My Hope Hero, so we can share what our heroes are doing to activate hope in their lives. And this is especially good with youth, so they can start looking up to people that have overcome similar challenges to them and seeing how these heroes use the Shine Hope framework. We have a Hopeful Minds for Teens program, a Hopeful Minds overview, educator guides. We have a new evidence-based college course so you can activate hope on the college campus. There are programs in the workplace, overview courses, 90-minute courses for learning the what, why, and how to hope. What I want you to know about hope is it's a skill. You've got to practice these skills to become hopeful. It's easy to fall into despair and helplessness when we deal with challenges in life, and it takes intentional work and practice to get to hope. And yet it is always possible. So no matter what life brings, keep shining hope. Thanks so much for listening in. Have an awesome day. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. Should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Getsky, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.